Hello cinephile and welcome to the Showcast, a series of candid conversations from the world of film brought to you by The Film Verdict and hosted by yours truly, Matt Micucci. Tonight we've got something truly special for you. We're going to dive into a real gem straight from the new directors section of the 2024 San Sebastián International Film Festival in Spain. The film is My Eternal Summer, marking the feature directorial debut of the very talented Sylvia Le Fanu. Now, this isn't just any coming-of-age story. It's about a family of three on their summer holiday, seen through the eyes of a 15-year-old girl. And she's at that delicate age discovering herself while at the same time coping with the heartbreaking reality of her mother's terminal illness, sharing what could be their final memories together. And here's where it gets really interesting. Sylvia Le Fanu, the director herself, is joining us on the show. She'll be sharing with us the deeply personal origins of this story, how she explores both identity and mortality in such an honest and intimate way. We'll also get into her naturalist approach to capturing this narrative on film. And if that's not enough, she's going to take us down memory lane, reflecting on her earliest memories of cinema and what led her to the director's chair. So fire up an Audiotini and listen to the audio waves as they fly through the air. This is the Showcast. Hi Sylvia, welcome to the Showcast.
Hi, thank you. Nice to be here.
Speaking to us directly from the San Sebastián Film Festival in Spain, what are the vibes like over there? How is it treating you?
Very well.
Good.
It's lively, buzzing, warm. I mean, the weather, but also the people. Very lucky to be here.
Brilliant. And of course, you're representing the film My Eternal Summer, screening at the festival in the new directors section. We'll be speaking about it in a little bit. But first, what I like to do for these conversations is I like to break the proverbial ice by asking my guests a very simple question. I'd like to ask you the very same one. What is your earliest memory of cinema?
That's a good one. I think my earliest memory, intense memory, is watching Titanic in 98.
Yeah.
97. It being 8 years old, just being completely overwhelmed and for the first time understanding the concept of death and probably being a bit traumatized. And after that, I watched it about 50 times more that year. And then they sent me off to a child psychologist because I was scared of dying.
Whoa.
But still to say, the film has a very, very, very special place in my heart.
Well, hold on a minute. So is this true that you went to because in a way that would have something to do with your film too, which I watched, and a lot of it covers the theme of mortality.
Yes, that's true. I mean, of course, one can always look at these things retrospectively and make analyses. I think that was something that was talked about with this. I mean, I was just a hypochondriac and I thought I was going to die, and probably I shouldn't be saying these things in an interview, but that did all sort of start the same year that I watched Titanic 50 times.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. I want to get into that a little more as we move on, but then, following up on that theme, when did you start thinking about becoming a filmmaker? And given what you just said, was maybe like telling your stories and eventually through the medium of film a way to handle all of your fears and what was going on in your head?
I think at a subconscious level that probably, I've been saying this today, that probably wanting to make this particular film, even before knowing I wanted to make this film, was probably somehow motivating me to get into film in the first place. There was this urge that I wanted to understand something about the things I didn't understand through images and sound. I grew up also with my father has a background in film, so I did also get film in my life very early. I've been lucky to have it as a kind of backdrop to my youth, but I think I didn't know I wanted to be a director until quite late in my 20s. I guess I didn't have maybe the confidence to say that was what I wanted to do.
Right. Right. And do you feel like, aside from, your father having, that background and, being familiar with that world, do you feel like there was something that drew you to cinema or filmmaking more than perhaps, other art forms like literature, sculpture, painting, music?
I've asked this question myself. In many ways, I'm envious of painters who can quickly sketch something, and the film always takes such a long time. But probably because of the impact film has had on me. I mean, so not only Titanic, but also films since are just some of the moments in my life that have been most intense or, thought awakening, just made the greatest impression, I guess,
Absolutely. It was the art form that had a lasting impact on you. But so let's get into a conversation about My Eternal Summer. I watched this film and of course it's very powerful. I'm looking forward to talking with you about it, but here we go. I'm going to try it very simply. It's the story of essentially told from the perspective of a 15-year-old girl. Her family spends summer at their parents' vacation home. This holiday coincides with what might be the mother's final summer because she's dealing with a terminal illness. So very simply, though, as a follow-up question, you talked about how mortality, exploration of certain things that, had an impact in your life might have impacted you actually becoming a filmmaker in the first place. And in the press kit for this film, I did read that it was a film inspired by your own experience. Is this correct? And what's that process even like, talking about things that are so close to your heart and also very often difficult to talk about in the first place?
Yeah, and maybe because they're difficult to talk about in the first place, that is probably part of the, as I was saying, the subconscious urge to find another way to communicate about it and understand it. It is based on my personal experience of losing a mother at a young age and being in that, in a way, dilemma of being young and in a way being at the beginning of everything and of life, and then having to find a way to deal with the end of life and all the dilemmas that creates. So, of course, the film itself is fictional, and it took a process of almost 3 years to write it. So it's very far from one-to-one my experience, but the kind of emotional core of it is definitely close to. Was that the question, or you was just asking how was that?
No, that's a good answer, actually. And as a follow-up, because I do think that it's very important in the narrative that it is told through the perspective of this 15-year-old girl. We all know that the mid-teens are a particularly important time for self-discovery in the lives of anyone, So do you feel like identity is just as important to this film as mortality, which we've already discussed?
In many ways, yes. It was very important for me to, exactly, capture the experience of just being a teenager and in a way having scenes that in a way just were that, and exactly putting that up as a contrast to then having, so what's it like being in love, but at the same time being in grief. And I think anyway, when you're 16, your all feelings are so intense anyway, and having then to deal with questions of mortality in a way, it's overwhelmingly, it's too much. But it also, I think, creates that there's kind of part of the character, the young character, that invites in this I'm not going to say likes the grief, but in a way it's making her realize what life is about as well at the same time. So of course it's really sad, but it's also intensifying all the feelings.
Yeah. I mean, it's the coming of age. A friend of mine who actually happens to be a poet has a very great, line that he says, the heart breaks to get bigger. I don't know whether he came up with it. I suspect that he didn't, but that's a different story. When I talk about identity, though, it's really important, interesting watching this film. It wasn't just her journey, but also occasionally she seems to want to understand how people perceive her. She's always asking people around her, do you think that I'm paraphrasing, do you think that I'm good? Do you think that I'm a good daughter? Do you think that I'm this, that? She wants to know what people think of her, which I thought was was a small nuance of the film that just made it all the more real, which brings me to my question. Did you want the film to feel as naturalistic as possible?
I think that was right from the beginning, the way we talked about it. We almost talked about it as we wanted to make a documentary. The way we work in writing is, in a way, we're inspired by the way you create documentaries. You just follow a character and see what happens instead of having preconceived ideas of how to shape the story. We're just in a way interested in following the characters and seeing what happens. Of course, that's not completely true, but when you say naturalism, I guess that would make sense from the way we worked with it. And my sense of it is the films I like as well are very naturalistic, I guess.
Right. You talked about writing the film, but then I did feel like there was, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'd like to know actually how you worked with your actors, with your cast members. Was it a case where like you did allow them some space, some room to feel out their characters, what they were going through, and just have a more natural idea of their journeys too?
Actually, I would say once the script was written, like the final, it was actually quite, I'm always going to want to do that take where whatever happens, but it was quite close to the script. There wasn't much improvisation, is what I'm trying to say. We did have, but I guess in a way, the way we worked with the script was through improvisation. So the method of writing it was free like that. But then when we had the script, it was more, is that answering? Sorry.
It does. And I'll tell you why, Sylvia. What you're saying completely makes sense to me because I always suspected, and I don't know whether he's an influence of yours, but I'm a big fan of John Cassavetes, for example. I'm a film nerd, so every now and then in these podcasts, I just drop names, right? I always suspected that his films were completely improvised, and then I was surprised when he would say time and time again, no, the films are not improvised. They may be filmed as if it was a documentary, like you said, but the scripting is super important to my filming, and that actually does make sense when you talk about it that way. But then how do you achieve that level of intimacy that was super important in this film? Because we're talking about three people who are also a family and they're forced in this house in this very extreme situation. So is there something that you do to nurture that intimacy that we see in the film?
You have good questions. I mean, of course, we were lucky to have quite a lot of rehearsal time. When I say rehearsal, I'm not actually meaning like traditional rehearsal because we didn't do a lot of that, but just spending this time together. And I think we talked a lot around the film, not so much actually, of course, we read the scenes, but just making a very safe relationship and environment. And then I hate to spoil it, but of course, filming and editing is in the end, it's all make believe, right? Like, so of course there was this intimacy, but it is also a film that I felt in our post work. It was a film that really, of course, all films come together in the edit, but this was particularly a film that had to come together in the edit. I'm struggling a little bit to explain why. I'm not taking anything away from the actors and their performance, which was amazing, but it was somehow important for me to work, to not put the pressure on them in a way, to have that everything had to be the performance. In a way, I wanted the overall situation to be strong enough that they had to do quite little in a way. I don't know if this is making any sense.
It does, yeah, absolutely. Sylvia, you're actually really good at explaining it, and I wish we had more time to delve into it a little more. I'm sure we will get the opportunity to do that again. But I bet we better stop it now because you're busy there in San Sebastián, and there's someone standing behind you, and I know that they're gonna let me know soon enough that I have to shut up. But Sylvia, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you for good questions. Have a nice day.
And that is going to do it for us, folks. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the Showcast, and if you're hungry for more candid conversations from the world of film, don't forget you can find plenty more waiting for you at filmverdictnetwork.com, or just search for TFV Network on your favorite podcast platform. Until the next time, from the Film Verdict, this is Matt Micucci signing off. See you soon.